Okay, part 3. So I've got the wiring done. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did to get it all wired up. It wasn't too bad. Just tried to spend some time hiding the wires, and also got electricity run to the electric fuel pump. So we'll look at that. Okay, so let's start with the power. The instructions say to wire power to the EFI unit directly to the battery. So I've done that. I'm just waiting to hook up the negative, but I basically put everything in this sheath, and I tried to hide it. So I ran it into the fender here on the left side. It goes behind and it kind of comes up here, and it goes up and basically starts running along the firewall. And really there's two connectors here. This is one of them, and this is, I think, the 10 pin. You'll notice, oh no, I lied. Okay, this is the 10 pin here, and you'll notice that I basically shrink wrapped and cut off 9 out of the 10 wires there. This is what's left of them. So that 10 pin connector is kind of an optional one because it does things like nitrous control and a bunch of stuff that I don't care about. The only one I care about is this brown wire, and it goes to the tack, goes to my factory tack. This, I think it's a 7 pin connector. This one is used, it's not optional. Sorry for the camera angle. This is, so this basically, the instructions say what they do, but the pink wire goes to power when you have the key turned on, and then this yellow wire goes to the distributor where it says tack. So that's basically the RPM signal going into the EFI unit. I'm going to get some double-sided tape to try to hide these things and get them in position. There's a couple, there's a fuse and it looks like a relay here. They come with the kit, and I basically used a screw attached to this thing to keep them mounted in place. So as far as I can look at my options, I kept it as clean and tucked all the wires as much as I could as possible. These 3 cables go to the EFI unit. I think one of them is to the handheld controller that goes in the cab. I can't remember what the other 2. I think they go to the they go to these 10 and 7 pin harnesses. Another one of these cables goes down to the O2 sensor, which we'll look at. Yeah, so the wiring wasn't too bad. Now they say in the instructions to try to separate power cables away from signal cables, and I tried doing that everywhere I could. You know, for example, over here, and then also there's power and signal along here, but I tried to put some upper and some lower to keep them a little bit separate. So a lot of these cables, or not a lot of them, but a couple of them, specifically this one here is the cable for the handheld controller, and then there's another one here somewhere. This goes to the tack, and then there's another one coming out that goes to the 12-volt power when you have the key turned. So yeah, just using the existing holes in their firewall. So yeah, now we're going to jump underneath and just double check some of the wiring we've done there. All right. Okay, so this is power to the fuel pump, electric fuel pump, and yeah, I just ran it in a sleeve along the top of the frame rail, and it's pretty well protected. For the ground, I just used both cables or wires are blue just because I used what they gave me. So the one's positive, that's the one on top, and the bottom one is negative. And what I did is I ran along the top, and I'm just going to hop on the outside of the frame rail here. Okay, and what we're seeing, this is an existing ground. It looks like some sort of frame ground that came with the truck, and so I just kind of hopped it over and terminated it there, so that should be fine. Let's see if I flip the camera here. Okay, so for the what are we looking at here? So oxygen sensor, this cable there was just enough, length, and I just, again, secured it with zip ties out of the way of heat back up to the where it terminates up there. Okay, so what's left? Well, I topped up the coolant, and I'm going to go through the checklist. So there's basically a startup procedure in the instructions, and it just gives me some things to double check. And there's a startup procedure with the screen that is going to kind of walk me through and have me input some of the details about the truck, the cubic inch, whether I'm using timing control or not, which I'm not. I also need to put some gas in the tank because I drained it. So got my jerry can with premium. We're going to put it in, and yeah, I'm gonna get to the point where I can prime the pump without starting the engine, because I want to just go under and check for leaks before I start it. I'm gonna have a fire extinguisher handy just as a cheap insurance, but I'm not expecting any leaks. And I may prime the pump. I saw in the instructions it didn't say anything about priming the hose, basically taking the hose off at the EFI unit and just engaging the pump to fill up the fuel lines. But I did see a video where someone did that, so we'll see if I do that or not. I don't have a pressure gauge that goes up to 60 psi, so I can't really check the fuel pressure, but maybe there's a reading on the EFI unit that will tell me what the fuel pressure is. All right, so we should be starting it today if everything works as planned. Okay, so turned the key into accessory mode or on mode, and the screen lit up, which was very exciting. Then I went through the calibration wizard in the instructions, which basically have me set up things like the number of cylinders, the cubic inches, which is 402, the target idle, which I set as 800 for when it's warmed up. I set the camshaft to street strip. I set the ignition type to coil, brackets, no timing control. Even though I don't actually have a coil, I just got a distributor, but it seemed when I called Holley tech support about where to hook up my yellow wire, which is the RPM signal into the ECU, they told me just to set it to the tack signal on the distributor, which I did. So then I skipped to step 10, and I basically said start, which kind of loads the program into the ECU. Then I basically went through a sensor verification process, which is what we're looking at right here. So it's supposed to say stall, TPS is 0, which it's supposed to say. The map pressure is 88 kPa, which is normal for a little bit higher elevation, which we're at. And the CTS, that's just the temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit or something, 68. The IAC position, it says to refer to another section, but I couldn't find it. Yeah. Then it says ignition timing, which is kind of strange. It says 15 degrees because in the instructions it says it should say battery. So I went through the initial wizard again just to make sure the timing is set as not controlled by the ECU. I picked the coil option when I did the setup, so I double checked that. So I'm guessing this is just like a software version thing, why it's not saying temperature at the bottom anymore. So yeah, the fuel pump, I could hear it prime on, and I went under and looked and there's no leaks, and that's good. So I'm basically at the point where we're going to turn it over, and it says to keep an eye on the display. The RPM section should say syncing. And I've done the pre-start checklist, except I don't have anything to measure fuel pressure. So I'm going to do it. Kasha, can you get a fire extinguisher handy? Yep. So first, literally the first time ever trying to turn it over here, let's see what happens. Okay, I kind of let off the ignition. You know what? My battery sounds low. So that was my bad. I'm gonna fix it. Okay, so my mistake. I didn't have the battery charged. So it's charged now. It's been charging for about 2 hours. And I'm gonna look at the screen and see if the volts are displayed here on the startup screen. Before it was telling me timing is set at 15 degrees. So I'm hearing the fuel prime, or fuel pump prime. Okay, it still says 15 degrees ignition timing, so I'm going to try to turn it over now, and we'll see what happens. So I don't know why it's showing timing here. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the rest of the instructions about the startup to see what the next steps say. Thank you for all the help, Crank. Okay, so wrap up for part 3. The good news is the truck runs. I'll start with the good news and finish with the bad news. So as you saw, it took a few turns to get it going, but once it was going, it actually kept getting better and better. I was watching the temperature rise towards 160 when it says it starts learning, but even before that, or even once I got there, I was noticing the idle was smoother than I've ever heard it before with the carb. And this thing has a comp cam in it. I'll put the details below, but I also noticed after it got warmed up that normally there's a puddle of liquid behind the exhaust even after it's running. It's kind of spitting out, you know, I don't know what it is, unburnt gas. But with this, it was bone dried. There wasn't anything coming out the exhaust, which was, I assume, is because of the Holley Sniper EFI kit. The screen was cool. I basically was able to adjust the RPM, and I even tried dropping it down all the way to 550 RPM, and it still didn't sound crazy. Like, I mean, I was expecting that at that low RPM of idle, it would kind of get pretty choppy, but it didn't, so I brought it back up to about 750. So that was good. The two things. One is I realized that the throttle is not opening to 100%. When I put my foot down all the way on the gas, I can see that it only opens to 85%. So I'm going to need to play around with the throttle linkage to get that perfect. And I'll just show you that. Maybe I can get some input from someone. So this this throttle linkage is, I don't know how to adjust it. Like it kind of terminates below is for the kick down for the transmission. I understand how I can adjust this, but maybe I'll have to look it up if it's this thing that I turn here or whatever. But basically this is not opening to 100% from inside the cab. Okay, the bad news. Let's see if we can get it on video here. Okay. Oh, it's almost, there it is. Sorry, I'm gonna, there we go. I don't know if you can, yeah, there you go. So you see the crack? So this is the factory temperature sensor that goes to the temperature gauge. And if we look down here, see the green? Coolant. So it was up to temperature, and I listened and I heard something, and I found this crack here. So I think what happened is I over tightened this when I put it back in, and there wasn't a crack at the moment, but as it heated up, everything expanded and it probably cracked then. So I think I'm probably gonna have to replace the intake manifold. I'll check if I can get this repaired. I doubt it. So that's going to be a bit of a hit to the bank account. So I guess good news is everything as far as the Sniper goes seems to be working great. Bad news, I made a mistake probably over tightening that, and now I've got to deal with that. So yeah, it's winter still, obviously, and I won't get any like actual driving time to help it learn, but even just the idle seems good. And yeah, so far really happy with everything, and looking forward to the snow melting and getting some miles on it. So thanks for following along, and there will be a part 4 once I get the intake manifold replaced probably and everything put back together. One thing I'll mention too is upon the advice of someone else who's done this, I installed this spacer between the intake manifold and the EFI unit. So I'll put the link. It's a 1/4 inch, and that's it. Thanks for watching.